Imagine if everything you thought you knew about demons wasn't just folklore or myth, but instead part of a secret government dossier. Today we're diving into a series of discoveries that suggest our institutions have spent decades investigating phenomena that, to some, appear downright demonic. Now, while nothing in these files confirms the supernatural, the clues are fascinating and disturbing. From classified UFO reports to Cold War experiments in psychic research, let's explore 10 points that reveal what the government might really know about these eerie entities and why they'd rather keep it under wraps. Could UFO files hide more than alien encounters? Deep in the vaults of declassified Air Force files, you'll find accounts of unidentified aerial phenomena that often include details you'd expect from a horror movie. During the 1950s and 60s, witnesses reported not only strange craft, but also eerie figures hovering near them. Some descriptions, dark, shadowy silhouettes with intense otherworldly eyes, bear an uncanny resemblance to what folklore calls demonic. Although these reports were usually chalked up to misidentifications or mass hysteria, the parallels have sparked curiosity. Government investigators at the time were more interested in national security implications than explaining these unusual details, leaving many questions unanswered. Could these chilling accounts be misinterpreted encounters with something beyond our reality, or merely the byproduct of stress and fear during an era of Cold War tensions? What if psychic research opened a door to the demonic? During the height of the Cold War, the US government embarked on a series of controversial studies into psychic phenomena, one of which was the infamous Project Stargate. The goal? To determine if remote viewing could provide a strategic edge against adversaries. Some of the remote viewers described their visions in vivid detail, at times encountering grotesque demonic figures that seemed to manifest as both warnings and threats. While most of these descriptions were later dismissed as the mind's creative interpretation under duress, the language used, filled with images of shadowy beings and malevolent presences, remains striking. The fact that the government funded such research in the first place points to a recognition that the line between the psychological and the paranormal can be disturbingly thin. Even if no demon was ever officially acknowledged, these experiments revealed that, when pushed to the limits, the human mind might see more than just what's there. Can occult symbols and military research be two sides of the same coin? Ever notice how a few cryptic symbols on military installations seem to hint at something more than mere decoration? Behind the scenes, some intelligence units have dabbled in studies on occult practices. During the Cold War, certain military research groups took an interest in how occult symbolism affected enemy morale and influenced cultural behavior. In classified reports, analysts documented incidents where groups employing demonic imagery in rituals and ceremonies managed to incite panic and confusion. These symbols, often misinterpreted as mere superstition, were scrutinized as potential tools for psychological warfare. Although the official line was that these were cultural curiosities with little practical impact, the fact remains. Governments have investigated how demonic imagery can shape perceptions and behavior. It is a fascinating intersection where the worlds of national defense and ancient mysticism meet, a place where fear itself becomes a weapon. Have you ever wondered why exorcisms sometimes made the government's radar? Exorcisms might seem like strictly religious affairs, but throughout the late 20th century, there were surprising instances when government entities took note of alleged possession cases. In several urban hospitals and correctional institutions, officials documented incidents where individuals displayed extreme behavior that some local clergy quickly attributed to demonic influence. Behind closed doors, some state agencies quietly collaborated with religious experts to address these phenomena, often framing them as severe psychological disturbances rather than supernatural events. Detailed records from these cases reveal not only the medical and psychological investigations that followed, but also hints of rituals performed in desperate attempts to reclaim control over inexplicable behavior. Though officials ultimately concluded that many of these instances were manifestations of untreated mental health issues, the overlap between clinical symptoms and traditional signs of possession remains one of the more intriguing and lesser-known chapters in the study of the unexplained. Did you know that classified files mention eerie rituals and symbols? Hidden away in some government archives are cryptic notes and coded references to occult rituals conducted in isolated communities. In In the investigation of certain violent incidents, law enforcement agencies unearthed evidence suggesting that local cults had been invoking demonic names and symbols prior to attacks. Although these investigations were typically classified as routine criminal inquiries, the language used in some reports was chillingly specific. References to dark rites and summoning ceremonies appear alongside more conventional evidence, leaving researchers to wonder about the true nature of these groups. Were these merely superstitious practices exaggerated by a culture steeped in myth, or did they hint at a deeper, more mysterious knowledge? Even if the government never confirmed the existence of literal demons, the meticulous documentation of these rituals underscores a quiet acknowledgement. Something unsettling was happening, and it demanded attention, even if only as a psychological tactic to understand and contain potential threats. Could monitoring fringe cults be a gateway to understanding demonic beliefs? Throughout the 1970s and 80s, intelligence agencies were on high alert regarding fringe cults and radical groups whose ideologies strayed far from mainstream society. Many of these groups embraced demonic lore as part of their identity, performing rituals that defied conventional logic. Government agents compiled detailed dossiers on these organizations, not only to monitor potential threats, but also to study the psychological underpinnings of their beliefs. In one particularly revealing report, an agent noted that certain cult leaders used demonic narratives to control their followers, a method that combined fear, isolation, and the allure of forbidden knowledge. While no direct evidence emerged to prove the supernatural, the sheer depth of these investigations indicates that government officials were taking these phenomena seriously. The record suggests that even if the demons themselves weren't real, the impact of belief in them was, and continues to be, a potent force that governments can neither ignore nor fully explain. Have you ever thought about how fear can be weaponized? History shows us that the most effective weapons are often not physical, but psychological. During the Cold War, for example, governments on both sides of the Iron Curtain deployed propaganda that tapped into deep-seated fears, often borrowing heavily from demonic imagery. In a series of classified briefings, strategists discussed how to evoke terror by comparing enemy actions to the malevolence traditionally associated with demons. The goal was simple: make the adversary appear not just human, but monstrously other. While these tactics were part of broader information operations rather than a study of the paranormal, they reveal an understanding that the human mind is particularly vulnerable to stories of the supernatural. This strategic exploitation of demonic symbolism helped shape public opinion during times of intense political rivalry. Even if the government's interest was less about proving the existence of demons and more about harnessing the power of fear, it definitely reminds of how ancient legends can be repurposed as modern psychological weapons. What if science could actually explain demonic experiences? It might surprise you to learn that some of what we label as demonic encounters may have a very scientific explanation. Researchers funded by government grants have investigated how extreme stress, sleep deprivation, and electromagnetic disturbances can trigger hallucinations and vivid nightmares. In controlled studies, participants exposed to specific environmental conditions, such as erratic electromagnetic fields, reported seeing figures or shadows that resembled the classic image of a demon. These experiments were designed not to prove the supernatural, but to better understand how our brains react under duress. The results? A compelling demonstration that the human mind, when confronted with unfamiliar or extreme stimuli, can create experiences that mirror centuries-old demonic lore. While these findings don't confirm that demons are roaming the corridors of government labs, they do suggest that what we sometimes perceive as supernatural might be the product of very real, very human neurological processes. Have you heard about the electromagnetic fields that play tricks on our minds? A handful of government-funded studies have zeroed in on a very curious phenomenon: the effect of electromagnetic fields on human perception. In some cases, soldiers and civilians have reported encountering shadow figures or sinister shapes during periods of intense electromagnetic activity. These occurrences often coincide with natural phenomena or experimental tests gone awry in military installations. Although the official explanation usually points to interference with neural processing, the eerie timing meaning and appearance of these figures have led some to wonder if there is a kernel of truth to the idea of demonic visitation. Government reports on these studies describe the events in clinical details, using language that, when stripped of its scientific veneer, reads like a modern exorcism of fear. Even if the fields themselves are not harboring supernatural entities, the way they warp our perceptions is a reminder that sometimes the most frightening demons might simply just be a trick of the light or the mind. Is there a sinister intersection between modern science and the unexplained? In recent years, research at the crossroads of neuroscience and quantum physics has begun to peel back the layers on human perception and anomalous experiences. Some contemporary government-funded projects are revisiting questions that border on the paranormal, investigating how our brains interpret signals that defy conventional logic. These studies have uncovered intriguing correlations. Environments with specific electromagnetic patterns or even unusual acoustic signatures can trigger experiences that many describe in terms steeped in ancient demonology. While these projects stop short of endorsing the existence of literal demons, they do highlight that our understanding of reality is still evolving. The government's continued investment in exploring the unexplainable shows that the search for answers, no matter how uncomfortable, remains a priority. After all, if science can someday demystify these experiences, we might finally understand why our ancestors were so captivated and terrified by the idea of demons lurking in the shadows. Alright guys, that is about our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!